The suitor from the Heliox Dominion arrived wrapped in ceremonial plasma silk, and an ego large enough to require its own gravitational field. The royal court shimmered around him, floors of liquid crystal adjusting to every footstep, hovering sigils translating 27 dialects in midair, chandeliers made of captured starlight humming softly like patient gods. At the far end of the hall, upon a throne that did not touch the ground but chose instead to float in quiet defiance of physics, sat the princess. She looked human at first glance. That was always the surprise. Smooth bronze skin, dark intelligent eyes, posture carved from discipline and boredom in equal measure. Only when one looked twice did the difference reveal itself. Her long ears, elegant and finely tapered, curving slightly backward like silver-edged leaves. They moved when she was amused. They stiffened when she was irritated. At this moment they barely twitched. The suitor knelt, though he made certain everyone noticed the way he knelt. "Radiant heir of the Celestian throne," he began, voice amplified by a discreet drone orbiting his shoulder. "Our fleets combined would outnumber every neighboring empire. Together we would be unstoppable." The princess tilted her head, one ear angled forward. "Unstoppable at what?" she asked calmly, a pause. "At being unstoppable." A faint ripple passed through the court. It was not quite laughter. It was the polite tremor of officials trying not to lose their careers. The princess rested her chin lightly against her fingers. "And besides unstoppable dominance, do you offer conversation, humor, perhaps a hobby?" The suitor blinked. "I command 17 battle cruisers." "So no hobbies," she murmured. Her chief advisor cleared his throat in distress. The hovering sigils flickered anxiously, as if even the translation algorithms were uncomfortable. "I decline," she said simply. The suitor stood too quickly, plasma silk flaring in wounded pride. "You reject strategic supremacy." "I reject predictable boredom," she replied. "Next." The doors parted again. This one glowed faintly blue, bioluminescent veins pulsing along translucent skin. He carried a crystalline relic said to contain a fragment of a collapsed star. It hummed ominously, very dramatic. The princess watched him approach with the patience of someone waiting for weather to pass. "My people offer eternal energy," he said, raising the relic. "With this union, your empire will never know scarcity." Her ear twitched. "And will I ever know peace? Peace is inefficient." "Then we are incompatible." Another rejection, another political alliance dissolving into cosmic dust. The court grew heavier with each dismissal. Whispers slid along the walls like digital ghosts. The empire required stability. Trade routes trembled. Border systems watched closely. Her mother, the Empress, observed from a higher balcony, expression unreadable. Only the faint tightening around her eyes betrayed concern. A telepath was ushered forward next. He did not speak at first. Instead, a poem bloomed directly inside the princess's mind, verses about unity, destiny, galaxies entwined. She blinked slowly. "You are rhyming eternity with infinity," she said aloud. The telepath faltered. "It is symbolic. It is repetitive." A faint laugh escaped one of the younger ministers before he choked it back. The princess rose slightly from her throne, not fully standing, but enough to signal conclusion. "I appreciate your effort," she told the telepath gently, "but I prefer conversations that do not require mental editing." He retreated, dignity fractured but intact. When the chamber doors sealed again, silence lingered. The air itself felt tense, charged like the moment before a lightning strike. Outside the palace, orbital defense satellites rotated in precise formation. Starships crossed the sky in disciplined arcs. The empire was vast, powerful, efficient, and restless. Her advisor stepped forward cautiously. "Your Highness, each refusal weakens diplomatic leverage. The council grows concerned." "Does the council intend to marry them?" she asked. "No, but..." "Then the council may continue being concerned." Her ears lifted slightly, catching distant frequencies only her species could perceive. The hum of the city below, anti-gravity lanes buzzing, children laughing somewhere far beyond the marble and metal. Real life. Unscripted life. She descended from her hovering throne and began walking along the edge of the hall. The floor illuminated beneath her steps in constellations that mirrored ancient star maps. Tradition. Expectation. History pressing gently against her shoulders. "I am not a treaty," she said quietly, though the room heard every word. "I am not a corridor between fleets. I will not anchor myself to someone whose primary personality trait is strategic advantage." A few officials shifted uncomfortably. One ambassador pretended to study a holographic datapad that displayed nothing but his own reflection. Before anyone could respond, a soft chime echoed through the chamber. Not ceremonial. Not rehearsed. An incoming vessel had entered Imperial orbit. Her advisor frowned at the floating display that materialized before him. A diplomatic envoy from Earth. A murmur rippled outward. Humans, someone whispered. Unpredictable, muttered another. Short lifespans, added a third, as if that were a moral flaw. The princess stopped walking, her ears angled forward sharply for the first time that day. Earth, she repeated. Yes, your highness. A cultural exchange delegation. Minor power, limited fleet presence, technologically inventive but politically fragmented. Do they bring a suitor? She asked, tone unreadable. Not formally. Good. A few nervous chuckles escaped the court. Through the high crystalline windows, a small ship pierced the atmosphere, sleek, but clearly not designed with imperial aesthetics in mind. It wobbled slightly before stabilizing, overcorrected, then corrected again. The princess watched its descent. For reasons she could not immediately calculate, her pulse shifted, not faster, not slower. Just different. Prepare the reception hall, she said. Her advisor blinked. You wish to attend personally. Of course, I have rejected half the galaxy this morning. I deserve something unexpected. One of her ears flicked with unmistakable amusement. And if they attempt to propose? The advisor asked carefully. She allowed herself a small smile. Then at least, she said, turning back toward her throne as starlight refracted around her silhouette, I hope they have a hobby. The human was late, not catastrophically late, not diplomatically insulting late. Just inconveniently, awkwardly late, the kind of late that suggests a wrong turn rather than a political statement. In the reception chamber, gravity flowed in gentle waves, adjusted to a neutral standard comfortable for most known species. The princess stood at the center platform, her long ears angled forward, listening to the layered frequencies of the palace systems. Advisors flanked her in symmetrical formation, hovering translators shimmered in anticipation. He has entered the palace, an attendant announced. Where? Asked the chief advisor, a pause. Technically everywhere. The human had triggered the adaptive corridor system. Somewhere beyond the chamber walls, shifting hallways rearranged themselves in response to his movement. The palace was designed to respond to neural patterns of authorized species. It had never calibrated for human impulsiveness. A distant voice echoed faintly through the crystal archways. Okay, that was definitely a wall 5 seconds ago. Several ministers stiffened. The princess pressed her lips together. He appears to be running, another attendant reported. The doors parted abruptly. He stepped inside, slightly out of breath, dark hair disheveled, diplomatic insignia tilted at an angle that suggested it had been attached in a hurry. He froze when he realized the entire imperial court was watching him. Hi, he said. The translators flickered. Greetings, they corrected in layered harmonics. He blinked at the hovering devices. Right, greetings. Silence expanded. He looked at the princess and stopped. She held his gaze steadily. For a fraction of a second, something shifted in the air between them. Not destiny, not prophecy, just awareness. Her ears lifted subtly. He swallowed. I apologize for the delay. Your hallway tried to eat me. A faint ripple of shock moved through the chamber. The palace does not consume guests, the advisor said stiffly. Good to know, the human replied, because it definitely felt like it was considering it. A small sound escaped the princess before she could stop it. It was not quite a laugh, but it was close. He stepped forward and attempted a bow. It was halfway between a military salute and a theatrical nod. No one could identify the cultural reference. I am Elias Arden, he said, cultural envoy of Earth. Cultural envoy, repeated one minister skeptically. Is that a military rank? No, Elias said. It means they trust me not to start a war by accident. That implies others might, the advisor noted. Oh, definitely, Elias said without hesitation. The translators struggled briefly with the concept of casual honesty. The princess descended one step from her platform. Gravity adjusted instinctively to her movement. You traveled far, she said. Yes, your highness. And you navigated our corridors. Barely. Her ear twitched. You are aware, she continued, that this audience occurs during a sequence of formal suitor presentations. Elias glanced around at the assembled dignitaries, the ceremonial arrays, the faint scorch mark where the Heliox representative had dramatically exited earlier. Oh, he said softly, should I have brought flowers? A diplomat from the outer rim gasped audibly. The princess tilted her head. Are flowers customary among your people? When we're trying to impress someone, he said. Or apologize, or both. And are you attempting either? He hesitated. I wasn't planning to, he admitted, but now I feel underprepared. A dangerous smile ghosted across her expression. You are not here to propose alliance through marriage, she said. No, Elias replied quickly. Absolutely not. I mean, unless that's how you normally greet visitors, in which case Earth might need to revise some policies. Several translators flickered red with processing strain. The tension that had suffocated the court earlier shifted into something lighter, unstable but not hostile. The princess circled him slowly, not predatory but observant. You show no fear, she noted. I'm terrified, he said immediately. I just process it verbally. A few younger attendants coughed to disguise laughter. She stopped in front of him. Most who stand here attempt to impress me with fleets, she said. Or energy relics. Or poetry. Elias grimaced. I did write a poem once. It rhymed space with face. It was not my finest achievement. Her ears angled forward fully now. You do not appear to calculate every word. No, he said. I calculate after I say them. It's inefficient. The admission hung between them like a curious artifact. Behind them, an ancient advisory AI activated silently, scanning biometric signals. Probability matrices unfolded across invisible dimensions. Compatibility likelihood, indeterminate, emotional resonance, rising. The princess folded her hands behind her back. If you are not here to propose, she said, what is your purpose? Elias exhaled slowly. To understand, he said. Our species know of yours through data, trade, rumors, but we've never actually listened. I volunteered because I wanted to see if the stories were wrong. And are they? He met her eyes directly. They're incomplete. Something in her expression shifted, not dramatic, not visible to most, but undeniable. The advisor stepped forward nervously. Your Highness, the council expects continuation of the scheduled proceedings. She did not look away from Elias. Cancel them. A shockwave of whispers erupted. Your Highness, the advisor began. I have evaluated 17 candidates today, she said calmly. None asked a question. She turned slightly toward the court. This one did. Elias blinked. I did. You asked if you should have brought flowers, she replied. That was panic. It was curiosity disguised as humor. He considered that. I'll take it. The AI recalculated. Emotional resonance. Accelerating. The princess stepped closer, close enough that he noticed the fine silver tracing along the edge of her long ears, the faint pulse of bioenergetic circuitry woven subtly into her ceremonial attire. If, she said softly, a union were proposed not as strategy, not as coercion, but as choice, what would you say? The entire chamber held its breath. Elias stared at her. Hypothetically, he asked, hypothetically. I'd ask if you were sure, he said. Because I don't come with fleets, I come with awkward timing and questionable poetry. A beat and honesty, she said. That too. Silence deepened. Somewhere above, orbital satellites adjusted their trajectory, unaware history was bending quietly below. The advisor opened his mouth to protest again. The princess raised her hand slightly. Yes, she said. It was not loud. It did not echo, but it silenced the room more completely than any command. Elias blinked. Yes to the hypothetical. Yes, she repeated, ears steady, gaze unwavering. Without thinking. Gasps fractured the stillness. Ministers recalculated political futures in real time. Trade algorithms destabilized. The advisory AI experienced its first recorded moment of processing delay. Elias looked around at the stunned faces, then back at her. I feel like I missed several steps, he said carefully. She allowed herself a small, luminous smile. Good, she replied. So did I. The silence after her yes did not end quickly. It fractured. Advisors began whispering in overlapping frequencies. Military commanders requested immediate strategy reviews. 3 neighboring systems transmitted polite inquiries that translated roughly to, Are you unstable? Elias stood very still. I want to clarify, he said carefully, that on Earth we usually schedule engagements after at least one dinner. You may schedule dinner, she replied calmly. That's comforting. The council convened within the hour. Holographic projections of ministers filled the chamber in concentric rings of light. Probability charts spiraled above them like anxious constellations. This decision destabilizes our leverage, one projection insisted. Or redefines it, the princess replied. You rejected 17 alliances. Yes, and accepted a human with no fleet. Yes, Elias raised a hand slightly. For the record, we do have fleets. They're just smaller and occasionally on fire. The chamber did not know how to process that. The Empress finally spoke from her elevated balcony. Explain your choice. The princess did not hesitate this time. For the first time, she said, I chose. A murmur moved through the projections. I rejected power because it sought to possess me. I accepted uncertainty because it stood beside me. Her long ears were steady now, not defensive, not restless. The advisory AI activated again, its tone softer than before. Analysis indicates human adaptive cognition compensates for limited military scale. Cooperative modeling suggests increased innovation yield by 312%. Elias blinked. I'm contributing statistically, that's new. The chief admiral folded his arms. Innovation does not deter invasion. Actually, Elias said, stepping forward before he could reconsider, sometimes it does. All eyes shifted. He swallowed once. You're preparing for war with the Verks coalition, right? The room stiffened. We are preparing for possibilities, the admiral said cautiously. You're fortifying borders, Elias continued. Reinforcing trade lanes, showing strength. That's predictable, they expect that. And your alternative? Asked the Empress. He hesitated, then spoke anyway. Don't outgun them, outthink them. Silence. He activated a small device on his wrist. A holographic projection expanded, messy at first, then stabilizing into a layered schematic. Humans can't compete with your fleet scale, he admitted. So we learned asymmetry. Redirect supply chains. Alter gravitational mapping data subtly. Introduce false navigational echoes at key jump points. Make their own aggression economically inefficient. The admiral leaned closer despite himself. That is unconventional. It's annoying, Elias corrected. Very annoying. The princess watched him differently now, not with curiosity but with recognition. You would defend an empire not your own, she said. I defend what we're building, he replied, not empire. We, the Empress, observed them both for a long moment. Then she inclined her head slightly. Proceed with simulation. Hours later, the results unfolded across the chamber. In scenario after scenario, direct confrontation led to heavy losses. In Elias' model, the Verks coalition withdrew within months, redirected by resource strain and strategic confusion. The advisory AI recalibrated. Probability of long-term stability increased. The admiral exhaled slowly. It appears effective. Elias smiled faintly. We specialize in being inconvenient. The political storm did not vanish overnight. There were statements, negotiations, a formal inquiry into the definition of the word, yes. But something fundamental had shifted. The princess no longer stood alone against tradition. She stood with someone who challenged it beside her. Weeks later, under twin artificial moons projected above the palace gardens, the formal union ceremony commenced, not as a treaty, but as a declaration of cooperative sovereignty. Representatives from allied systems attended. Even skeptical ministers watched with cautious acceptance. Elias stood opposite her, this time having practiced the bow correctly. I brought flowers, he whispered quietly. She glanced at the small arrangement in his hands, imported earth lilies adapted to survive her planet's atmosphere. You researched floral compatibility, she noted. I nearly caused a botanical incident, he admitted. Her ears flicked with unmistakable amusement. When she spoke her vow, it was not about fleets or dominance. It was about shared decision. When he spoke his, it was not about destiny. It was about choice. The Empress stepped forward last. Strength, she declared, is not the absence of uncertainty, it is the courage to stand within it. The Empire listened. In the months that followed, change unfolded gradually. Joint research stations formed along the outer rim. Human engineers collaborated with Celestian physicists. Trade routes expanded, not through conquest but curiosity. The Verks coalition tested their borders once. They withdrew 3 weeks later, confused and economically irritated. Inside the palace, the princess found herself laughing more often. Not the restrained court laughter she once allowed, but unguarded, sudden laughter that startled attendants. One evening, as they reviewed star maps together, she paused. I once believed refusing was power, she said, and now, Elias asked, now I understand choosing is. He considered that, That's much more intimidating. She leaned slightly toward him. Good. Her long ears brushed his shoulder lightly, not ceremonial, not strategic. Simply present. Across the galaxy, rumors spread, not of a reckless princess who defied tradition, but of a ruler who reshaped it. She had once rejected 17 suitors to avoid becoming a symbol. Now she stood as one willingly. Not a bridge between fleets, but proof that destiny, when uncalculated, could be stronger than design. And for the first time in generations, the Empire did not feel tense. It felt possible.